Ah yes, I finally get to talk about one of my favourite comic series, Asterix. This magnifique, French series was made by René Goscinny and Albert Uderzo, with the first book, Asterix the Gaul, being released in 1960. Further proceeding through the decades, summing up to over 30 comics as of today. The tale of Asterix is set in the era of the Roman Empire, and all takes place in a small Gaul village where Asterix, his friend Obelix, Dogmatix, and the rest of the village go on wild adventures and always try to deceive Caesar and his empire's funky plans.
The comics, while pertaining similar structures and comedic elements, they're still always a joy to read through. One book they'll be set in Egypt, and then in the next they'll be in Switzerland. So it added more to the adventure with each book. And you know what? I still enjoy reading these today. They're great. I mean, I even read this old German copy that I've had since I was a little kid. I don't know how to read German, but you know, colour is nice. I like colour.
Due to the success of Asterix, there came forth a bombardment of movies, toys, and you betcha the main course of every video I make, video games. And you'd be surprised to know that there are a plethora of Asterix games that have been released, from the NES all the way down to the Wii, reaching just about every known platform. I won't have enough time to cover all of them, and I don't have the kind of money to buy them all as well. So how about we start off with Asterix for the Super Nintendo. Before we get into the game itself, I wanted to mention something from this cruddy box art of mine. Apparently, if you were a lucky person that purchased a copy of this game, you could have had a chance to win the major prize of visiting the Asterix theme park. I didn't even know there was a theme park, but apparently it exists, which I'll admit is pretty cool. I wouldn't mind seeing a real life Obelix, you know. Well, you could just meet Gerard Depardieu for that anyway. So, Asterix for the Super Nintendo. It's honestly not a big event to brag about for endless pages, but I shall go in depth nonetheless. Developed in 1993 by Infogrames, Asterix SNES tells the story of Obelix being taken by the Romans, and everyone in the Gaul village, such as Vital Statistics and Getavix, want Asterix to venture forth to save his best friend. Like Asterix wasn't going to do that anyway. Asterix and Obelix are the best of buddies in the series, even though they have their qualms and disconnections every now and then. Especially in the movies, god damn, they get along as well as Cruella de Vil and Dalmatians sometimes. I'll put this out there, but Obelix would never be captured like that, and if so, he probably went through dozens of Romans, that's for sure. The journey begins, and it's Super Mario Bros. Plain and simple, it's Super Mario. I don't want to be cheap by saying that because that's the utmost cop-out way to describe this game, let alone other 2D platformers from this generation of video gaming. So, the structure for every level is to get from point A to point B, take out a bunch of Romans, take their helmets for more points, make sure not to get hit a lot through the course of the game or you will die, and die. My favourite part of any game in existence. The controls are honestly mediocre. The jumping feels rather off, being heavy when you lift up and kaplunk to the ground. There's a run button for jumping onto faraway obstacles, yet it comes off as slippery and too loosey-goosey to boot. Plus, the punching is not only delayed, but difficult to use against enemies. I mostly tapped it repeatedly, hoping for a single punch to work. What I can admire is the presentation. It captures 80% of the comic style aside from not having comic panels and all that jazz. Doesn't need it, but it could have been nice in the cutscenes to have that likeness from the series. The variety of levels are good and all. You have your typical forest area, ice area, cave area, you name it. They're basic, and although I wish they'd explore a bit more, like maybe revisit some of the famous places from the comics like Britain and so forth, what needed pure improvement would have been the level design. It's boring. You can just run to the end with no merit or try to be bothered collecting items around the area. But hey, the way Asterix just walks his way along is amazing. He does not give a toss about anything, and when you punch the enemies whilst moving along, it makes it all the funnier. The music is pretty nice, it sways into your ears with its old school SNES pizzazz. I wouldn't mind listening to it often. So yeah.
Asterix for the Super Nintendo is definitely a shrugged shoulders for me. Definitely not worth the price that I paid for it, but you might get some platforming fun out of it for a bit, and yeah, it's kind of a pass for me. You just steer clear of it. Maybe emulate it if you're very keen on trying it out. Anyway, let's continue further and take a brief look at Asterix and the Great Rescue for the Sega Mega Drive.
Immediately, we're granted with some killer 16-bit Sega music. Rather surprising rock and roll tracks are supplied in this Asterix game. Usually it'd be simple, dimple, upbeat melodies, but when you're to choose your character between Asterix and Obelix, the heavy twang kicks into gear, unleashing its full grungy harmony. Then you play the game, and becomes really generic and cryptic. This is the first level of the entire game, and you could honestly not jump throughout it. Bash some Romans and that'll be it, less than 30 seconds. But all of a sudden, the next section drives you into the hard zone and implements precise platforming and use the power-ups immediately. You have to shoot fire pellets at these crabs so you don't take damage, avoid these jumping fish, then there'll be this section where you have to pick up one of these potion canisters. One will give you clouds so you can platform up this high spot, and the other is for more fire. You gotta make sure you pick up the fire first or dodge it, otherwise you won't be able to progress. Then you go underwater, the best way to keep a player playing. I hate the seaweed up above, many moments where I hit the spikes upon the wall, not being able to see it. Also, we're underwater. The controls are okay, but the hit detection is absolute crap. You'll be rapidly punching at Romans or odd fish and they'll manage a hit without doing anything. Yeah, I don't really want to continue with this one.
Aside from the music, there's not too much to absorb from this Asterix experience. Run of the mill and very brutal after the first level. So we're just going to skip right past that and look at something that's more nostalgic and more befitting to my eyes, which is Asterix for the PlayStation 1.
Again, being developed by Infogrames, Asterix PS1 Almighty came out in 1998, around the time where Asterix was sort of coming back into the mainstream with the live-action movies such as Asterix and Obelix Take on Caesar coming out in cinemas near you. There was a video game for that, but I don't think I have the willpower for that one. Oh god, no. This game is a better potion magique to consume. Looking through the menus can already tell the passion of making this feel identical to the original comics is alive and present. I love how changing the options has character of its own. The annoying music boy with an elegant screaming voice can be adjusted in the volume settings. Lifting the difficulty adds more Romans to the screen. And my personal favourite, changing from mono to stereo. You bang those drums, man. Starting a new game, and we're greeted with an animated scene with Getafix, Asterix and Obelix. It's really good, the characters flow naturally, and thankfully, it's not CG full motion video. The Romans are coming to attack the Gauls. This is essentially every story I've heard in the books, and it's up to all the Gauls to take over the Roman Empire and secure their land, all done in the style of a strategy game. Yes, this is the game alright, tactical planning on taking over sections of this part of the map before the Romans do. I made that sentence more cryptic than it should have been. The Golden Cauldron are the Gauls, whereas the tents are the Romans, and I like it a lot. Surprisingly. Usually I hate strategy games because they're not my cup of tea, but it's simple and easy to get into. The best part is that it's not easy. It's actually rather challenging taking over plots of land by the Romans as the odds are stacked against you, but not in a bollocks bombardment kind of way. It's not impossible, it's just a matter of patience and making sure you don't use too many goals in one sector. Otherwise this happens. Is this the whole game though? No. Some areas on the map don't do much of anything, whereas there'll be moments where you'll transport into a minigame or 3D platforming section as Asterix or Obelix. As a kid, I played the demo for Asterix, and I loved the platforming sections and despised the strategy elements. Just let me be the big guy with the blue and white striped pants, alright? But now, with a more mindful mind, I love the strategy and absolutely hate the platforming in minigames. What's ever so aggravating about these sections is that characters are slow, sluggish, and very heavy to control. I can understand for Obelix because he's a titan that was dropped into a cauldron of potion magique as a baby, but the controls go the same for Asterix too. And when you're trying to do anything, it acts more like a chore rather than a satisfaction. Jumping is heavy, punching is heavy, and they both feel like weighted balloons. You can run, but it doesn't make things all the better. Plus, in some of the Asterix stages, the camera can be such a bastard. This forest level, for example, proves how annoying it can be trying to get through these stages. And you know what? I like the look of them, even though their pixels could give me a headache any second now. Yep, there we go, excuse me as I go get the painkillers, holy shit. It's really a shame because having both strategy and platforming could have been a nice back and forth for pacing. If it was just strategy, whilst fun, could have become more repetitive. If you want some garbage though, then you've come to the right place. Spinning this Roman around and failing because of false button tapping and timing is stupid. You gotta be correct in every fashion without breaking the controller. And when you do, it's not rewarding. You feel like you just ate through your least favorite food in the world. Anywho, mumbo jumbo Italiano, let's talk more positively, shall we? The music is grand. The strategy music theme is intense, but still keeps a witty, upbeat, cartoony style to it. And the other music is also fun. While it doesn't mesh well with the platforming sections, the compositions alone are great for walking about or even dancing to. Really fun stuff. The visuals in the strategy side of the table are incredibly simple, colourful, and really allure the eyes. Again, platforming side can die in a hole, but express the tones of the series.
Asterix for the PlayStation 1 is good, for the most part. If they fix the 3D platforming and the minigames, then we could have had a beloved classic on our hands here. I love the strategic elements, I love the visuals, the music, the cool options menu, and, you know, I love the setting of Asterix, so why not? It is a cool concept. Nevertheless, it is dragged down by that latter half that I mentioned before. And so it's kind of hard. Yes, give it a go, but maybe not. Far out, give it a go. Anyway, let's take a look at the last game that we have on our hands, which is based on the comic, which is based on the movie, but it's its own thing, but yet it's not its own thing. Asterix at the Olympic Games for the PlayStation 2. I swear I didn't mean to confuse you.
I think it's wise to not start off with the game, but with the comic and the movie. Asterix at the Olympic Games was the 12th comic out of the entire series, and is all about Asterix entering the Olympic Games, taking on the likes of this Roman dude and this dude, all while other mishaps ensue. Simple, gets to the point, funny, and ends with them eating boars at the Gold Village as per usual. Then in 2005, this comic got a French live-action film which followed the comic, but added more modern humor and lightsabers? What? It's alright for what it is. I had a few good laughs, but isn't as memorable as, say, Mansion of the Gods or Take on Caesar. But what of the game? Like I mentioned before, it's the game based on the movie, but it runs on its own fuel. Through the story, there's different dimensions and portal gateways that interlace the comic, the movie, and the game itself. It's truly bizarre, and I can appreciate it a lot. It doesn't follow the formula, and does its own separate thing. Is it humorous? Not really. You'll be more weirded out by the situations, yet isn't in your face. There is still a game to uphold. With the main aspect of the game, it's a 3D action-adventure title, and you'll be able to take control of both Asterix and Obelix yet again. They each carry the same controls with some slight changes to elements of play in some sections, mostly focused upon puzzle and platforming segments. You can do the jumping, the punching, the stomping, and the funky chicken. Wait, not that. You can grab enemies and swing them about with your ultra strength. What's different about playing them is that Asterix is more adjustable to climbing on ledges, whereas Obelix is more on heavy punching and knocking down large obstacles in the way. That's the major part of the game, but on the other side is the Olympic game activities. And some are really good, and some are, well, generic minigames. The major highlights of the minigames have to be the brawl, where you grab Romans, swing them around and throw them into the goals, but nothing, and I mean nothing, can beat Toad Ball, one of the most addicting games of them all. It makes the other mediocre games like tapping buttons to throw the thing game nothing whatsoever. Toad Ball is simply soccer mixed with volleyball, and is super fun. The objective is to kick the toad balls over the opponent's side and have the least amount of balls on your side. There'll be bomb balls that will get in the way, but it's satisfying kicking them over just in the nick of time. My favourite thing about this game is the music. It's bouncy, it's wacky, and gets you pumped for taking down some Romans. Speaking of music, while some of the tracks are great, some can sound generic and uninteresting. Then at times there'll be no music whatsoever, leaving a gargantuan awkward air. It doesn't really matter as the voice actors do a splendid job at voicing the characters. Asterix might seem a bit out of place, but I've never really figured what the perfect voice for Asterix was. Maybe in the animated movies. They're all goofy and have fun with the roles. And you know what? For a PS2 game, the presentation, the design of the scenery and the character models really feel like they were pulled from the comic but made for the 3D animated world. While the environments are more attuned to realism, the characters pertain to stretchy, jelly-like and lively. Odd descriptions, but that's what comes to my immediate mind. Now the length of the game is rather decent. It might drag a fair amount halfway through the game as the story slows down for the Olympic Games, but there are highlights to remember.
Asterix at the Olympic Games for the PS2, the Xbox 360 and the Nintendo Wii are a high recommendation from me. It's not going to be the best game that you've ever played in your whole entire life, but I can suggest that the bonkers narrative, the gameplay elements and the minigames, especially Toad Ball, are what set the deal straight for anyone that is a fan of Asterix and just a fan of games in general. So, out of all the games that we played today, this one is worth it. I suggest you buy it now because it's not actually that expensive. You can get it for $5 tops. Anyway, my name is James. These are my games. I don't have all of them in my hands, and I'll bid you adieu. Till next time. Bye bye. See you later. Auf Wiedersehen. Get this game. $5. Bye bye. Why do I end things awkwardly?
I don't even know why I'm letting you record my voice. What did I do for you, James? It's like I don't know what this is.
Hey James, it's Michelle. How are things? I don't know how to start these voice messages. Shit puts you on the spot. But yeah, it's been ages since I've seen you, let alone heard from you. And I was wondering if you wanted to catch up at my house and talk, maybe. I tried contacting your old phone number, like heaps, but I saw your mum the other day. She gave me a new one. She seems to be doing well. Anyway, the reason I'm calling is, well, I'm a bit worried about you, man. I've talked with the group, and they haven't heard from you at all. You're kind of like a ghost, honestly. I can understand why, since it happened last year, and I know it affected you. But if you want to talk about anything, just ring me, and yeah. I still live at the same house. Not much has changed, so like I said, come around and we could chill, play some games maybe. Shit, I better finish.